Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers, has always fascinated archaeologists and historians. It is widely regarded as the cradle of civilization where humans first began to develop agriculture, writing, and other advancements that propelled them toward modernity. But what secrets does this ancient land still hold? Join us on an American archaeology quest as we dig deep into the sands of Mesopotamia and unearth its long-forgotten secrets. A major find found by American archaeologists in Iraq in the late 19th century provided new information on an obscure, ancient Mesopotamian civilization. These cuneiform tablets were discovered by archaeologists, and they turned out to be historical documents written by the region's ancient inhabitants, the Sumerians. At the time, the Old Testament and the nascent field of Near Eastern studies had already made the Assyrians and Babylonians famous, overshadowing the achievements of the lesser-known Sumerians. The finding of Sumer has established the culture as the earliest in Mesopotamia. The Sumerians laid the groundwork for all subsequent Mesopotamian civilizations, yet they did not create vast empires or permanent cities like the Assyrians or the Babylonians. Among the many revolutionary innovations and achievements attributed to the Sumerians is the development of writing and the founding of libraries, towns, and educational institutions. There is an argument that they invented and perfected these pillars of civilization before anybody else. The achievements of the Sumerians, despite their importance, are largely overlooked by the general population. The Sumerians were gradually documented in history, but their cultural influence and importance waned as they assimilated into the surrounding cultural mosaic. The Sumerians led a comparatively steady existence in comparison to other ancient Near Eastern civilizations like the Hittites, Assyrians, and Neo-Babylonians, which endured huge and unexpected collapses. A deeper dive into Sumerian history and culture reveals a long-lasting impact on Mesopotamia. The political, governmental, artistic, literary, and religious climates are all influenced by them. The Sumerians are still owed a huge debt of gratitude by modern society. The Sumerians developed writing and the wheel, measured time in minutes and seconds, tamed nature, and constructed magnificent cities, while Western Europe was still in the Stone Age. By traveling through the desert, their caravans paved the way for future commerce. Their legacy is preserved in the Old Testament, which contains accounts of origins inspired by their myths and traditions. Evidence of the Sumerian culture and its successors can be found all through history. Some of the most famous ancient Near Eastern towns include Babylon and Jerusalem, although they are far from the only ones. Centers of science, literature, and theology, cities like Nineveh, Damascus, Uruk, Memphis, Thebes, and Sippar gave rise to empires and introduced novel concepts. But for every major metropolis, there were countless more that enjoyed a momentary heyday before falling into oblivion as their larger neighbors rose to prominence. Umma, in the southern Mesopotamian region known as Sumer, is one of the remarkable examples of an early ephemeral city. Soon after Uruk's rise to prominence in the early 3rd millennium BCE, Umma also became an important Sumerian metropolis. A great dynasty rose in Umma and spread its influence across southern Mesopotamia. Umma was in the center of things for a while, but it didn't last. In the end, the northern Semites conquered Umma and the surrounding area. Despite this setback, Umma survived till the late 3rd millennium BCE, when it flourished once more under the Neo-Sumerian 3rd dynasty of Ur. After a steep decline, Umma did not fade from history until the Neo-Babylonian era, which began in the 6th century BCE. The Sumerian civilization was the earliest in Mesopotamia, and its secrets were uncovered by American archaeologists in the late 19th century when they found cuneiform tablets in Iraq. Information written on these tablets shed light on the Sumerian people, their language, and their history. Although the Assyrians and Babylonians get more attention, the Sumerians were instrumental in developing Mesopotamian culture. They pioneered the use of symbols for writing, developing pictographs, and then the cuneiform alphabet. This breakthrough in communication aided the growth of Mesopotamian cities, educational institutions, and libraries. The cultural advancement of the Sumerians were crucial to the development of subsequent Mesopotamian societies. Both the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers played a significant role in the development of ancient Mesopotamia civilization, which flourished along their banks. The people who lived in Mesopotamia, which is located in the middle of a large desert, were dependent on these rivers for a variety of things, including drinking water, agricultural irrigation, and key transit routes. The flood pulses of the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers have, over the course of ages, endowed the southern plains of what is now Iraq with the most fertile soil in the Middle East. Even though politically they were far more divided, the people who lived in Mesopotamia managed to keep a large degree of cultural unity alive for the better part of 3,000 years. At various points in history, the rulers of the various areas of Mesopotamia, including Sumer, Akkad, Babylonia, Assyria, were in control of the entire region. During periods of strong political unity, rulers stretched their influence behind the two rivers, dominating surrounding territories and exercising control over the trade routes of the Middle East. This occurred during times when political unity was at its highest. Sumerian and Akkadian rulers of the late 3rd millennium BCE are credited with making the earliest known attempts at creating large-scale empires. Those attempts were launched around 2600 BCE. Although human civilization eventually spread to other parts of the world, its beginnings may be traced back to the ancient Middle East, which dates back thousands of years. We see the first cities, the first writing, and the first technologies originating in Mesopotamia, says Kellyanne Diamond, a visiting assistant history professor at Villanova University, whose specialty includes ancient Middle Eastern history and archaeology. The name Mesopotamia stems from an ancient Greek phrase that literally translates to the land between the rivers. This is a reference to the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, which are the two main sources of water for an area that is primarily contained within the borders of the modern-day nation of Iraq, but also encompassed portions of Syria, Turkey, and Iran. The existence of these rivers was a significant factor in the development of sophisticated cultures and innovations in Mesopotamia, including the invention of writing, intricate architectural designs, and complex administrative structures. The ability of people to dwell in one area and build permanent villages resulted from their ability to cultivate vegetation and bring wild animals under human control. These small communities eventually expanded and matured into the first cities. It was in these early cities that many of the defining traits of civilization emerged, including population densities, monumental architecture, communication, the division of labor, and distinct social and economic classes. However, the development of civilization in Mesopotamia was also influenced by other causes, in particular shifts in temperature in the natural environment, which pushed the people who lived there to become more structured in order to survive. This led to the beginnings of Mesopotamia's earliest known civilizations. According to Hervé Riquelot, the associate professor of Assyriology at the University of Chicago and an expert in the history of ancient Mesopotamia, the rise of civilization did not occur in precisely the same manner across the entirety of the region. As he explains, urban societies formed separately in Lower Mesopotamia, which is an area in what is now southern Iraq, where the early civilization of Sumer was based, and Upper Mesopotamia, which covers northern Iraq and a part of present-day western Syria. The climate of Mesopotamia, which was wetter 6,000 to 7,000 years ago than it is in that portion of the Middle East now, was one of the factors that contributed to the development of civilization in both locations. The earliest cities of southern Mesopotamia developed on the margins of a great marsh that provided an abundance of natural resources for construction, as in reed, and food, like wild game and fish, with water easily accessible for small-scale irrigation that could be organized on a local level and did not require the supervision of large-scale state structures, writes Recluo. This allowed for irrigation to be organized. People who lived in the south were eventually able to create long-distance trade with people who lived in other locations, since the marsh offered a connection to sea routes on the Persian Gulf, as pointed out in his commentary. According to Reculo, the rainfall was consistent enough in Upper Mesopotamia that farmers did not require a great deal of assistance from irrigation. Additionally, they had access to mountains and woods, which allowed them to hunt for animals and cut down trees to use as a source of wood. The regions also had land routes that led to locations to the north that were beyond the mountains, where people could collect resources such as obsidian, which is a form of rock that can be used in jewelry or for producing cutting tools. Barley and wheat were two of the most important crops for early Mesopotamian farmers, according to the British Museum. But in addition to that, they established gardens in the shade of date palms in which they grew a wide range of plants and vegetables, including beans, peas, lentils, cucumbers, leeks, lettuce, and garlic. In addition, they cultivated a variety of fruits, including grapes, apples, melons, and figs. In addition, they milked sheep, goats, and cows to make butter and butchered the animals so they could eat the meat. The agricultural revolution in Mesopotamia eventually led to the urban revolution, which Diamond identifies as the next significant phase in the progression of human civilization. Villages in Sumer began to develop into cities perhaps between 5,000 and 6,000 years ago. Uruk, a walled hamlet that had between 40,000 and 50,000 people living in it, was one of the earliest and most renowned of these settlements. According to the Ancient History Encyclopedia, some of the other people who lived there were Eridu, Bad Tabira, Sipar, and Shurapak. The Sumerians are credited with developing what is thought to be the first system of writing. They are also known for their sophisticated art and architecture, as well as their complex bureaucracies that were used to oversee agricultural practices, commercial endeavors, and religious practices. Sumer also became a center of innovation as a result of the Sumerians who took inventions that were established by other ancient peoples, such as pottery and textile weaving, and worked out how to perform them on an industrial scale. This allowed Sumer to become a hotbed of innovation. Researchers have unearthed brick temples with complex niches and pilasters, as well as other signs of sophisticated culture, in Tepe-Gawra, which is located in Upper Mesopotamia. Reculo suggests that climate change may have been an important contributor to the growth and development of Mesopotamian civilization. The climate slowly became drier and the rivers more unpredictable, he continues, approximately around 4000 BC. As the marsh receded from lower Mesopotamia, it left behind settlements that were now surrounded by lands that needed to be irrigated. This necessitated additional labor and possibly even greater coordination. Mesopotamians gradually evolved a more complex form of administration as a result of the increased physical effort and increased level of organization in their work that was required to ensure their survival. Reculo provides the following explanation. The bureaucratic apparatus that appeared first to manage the goods and people of the temples in the marshland cities increasingly became the tools of a royal power that found its justification in the support of the gods, but also in its ability to get things done. All of this culminated in the formation of a social framework in which the elites gained the labor of the lower classes by coercion or by compensating them with food and money in exchange for their service. According to Reculo, in a sense, the famed Sumerian agrarian system, its city-states, and the associated control of land, resources, and people were in part the result of people adapting to more adverse conditions. And this was due to the fact that the riches of the marshes had begun to become more scarce. In Upper Mesopotamia, on the other hand, people had adapted to a climate that was drier by shifting their social structures in the other direction. Reculo adds that in the reign, the devolution to a less complex social organization relying on villages and their small-scale solidarity took place. Mesopotamia eventually became the home to great empires such as Akkad and Babylonia, the latter of which saw its capital city Babylon develop into one of the world's most technologically advanced and populous cities. That's all for today's video, but we'll be right back soon. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel.